My name is Stephen Miller, and we dealt with dual factor with both male infertility and female infertility. The journey to understanding my diagnosis of male infertility started with my wife, having questions about us not being able to get pregnant. Like through those doctor's appointments, they wanted to test me, which after the fact, I realized that's kind of a rare thing to test the male factor right away. I remember when I was going through, like, before I started that first, semen analysis, I was thinking in my head of just like, I pray to God that it's not me. And the reason why I think it was saying that is because I felt a tremendous amount of guilt when I found out that, like, my count was low, and like I felt like I was a barrier to getting in the way of my wife's dream of being a mother. And I knew that she wanted to have kids even when we started dating, that was her dream. She wanted to be a mother. I don't remember specifically all the details, but it was not great for her. She found out through the doctor that I had a low count during that procedure. And some of the questions that we asked ourselves was like what did I do wrong? What did I do to cause, for me to have a low count? The unfortunate thing about some of all this is there is no question or answer why. There's no answer to why I have a low count. And even to this day, there's no answer why. I put a lot of weight on I was the cause. Even though we were dual factor, there's a lot of weight that I personally put on myself. So having the male factor fertility, I completely agree. It is not talked a lot about. It has impacted me both professionally and in my relationship. And there's not a lot of men talking about this. When I was going through it, I was left with wondering what is normal, what is considered air quotes, right, normal of the mental experience. And everywhere I searched about male factor infertility, it was literally just the clinical diagnosis. It was the medical information, supplements, all that, which is all great information. But it left me wondering, what was normal? And then I started asking the question, why? Why was this not covered? So I started asking other social workers, therapists, anybody in mental health, have you ever talked about infertility and mental health? And everyone that I asked said no. And I just started thinking, that's a problem, because now it's 1 in 6, right, worldwide that are, deal with infertility. As a therapist or future clinicians, if we're not talking about it, then how do we know how to support them? So I started my own podcast in June of 2021, I think. So, the whole goal of the podcast was really about sharing the male experience, because my experience with going through IVF is different than somebody else's, right? We all have different journeys. The goal was that, having more men talk about their different, experiences, that something would resonate with somebody to say, man, I'm going through something similar, and I'm not alone in this, right? And helping men feel not isolated, and being able to reach out to people and get support. And I think there's a lot of men out there that are reluctant to receive the help because women have the physical and the emotional aspects of fertility treatments, and they deserve all the support that they can get, because that is hard, and being on the different hormone shots and everything. But I think men often minimize our own struggles because women have the physical aspect, right? So I think we tend to minimize the emotional impact it has on us, witnessing our partners being distressed, and the helpless feeling that you have, that there's nothing I can do to fix it. And especially when it's male factor, that is even tougher, because you feel that guilt. And if I didn't have this experience, I wouldn't be in this space doing this work. And I think doing this work and being in this space as a way to like basically give back, it helps me cope with that too, right? It's like I'm doing something with this experience. And there's a lot of research that backs that up, that if you can make meaning or find some way of, making sense of your journey, like it helps you to cope with the stress of it. So it's really helped me, gain confidence and help me like even in my relationship, of just learning from others, it's enhanced it, but despite that I don't wish this upon anybody, but through that experience, like I was able to grow professionally and make it a career. And I think a lot of times people don't think that like men have their own reproductive stories. That doesn't mean that like men don't think about being a parent. So we have this idea, right, of like what fatherhood is going to look like. And we have this idea of like the good things that we've had in our childhood, we want to pass that on to our own kids, right? The thing that I thought about a lot going through this journey was, if I don't have kids, like my own biological children, my family tree ends. And I just remember thinking, like, putting a lot of pressure on myself to like basically carry on the family name. Like I said, I think men minimize it a lot, minimize like their own mental health. If you're not 100%, you can't give 100% to your spouse or your partner. Men need to realize that, like, that getting support for your mental health from different people, like, is okay, right? Like connecting with other guys that have gone through it, that was probably the most helpful thing that I had did in my journey. It helped me to realize like the feelings and thoughts I have like are valid, right? And not that I'm crazy or not that like, okay, this is not normal. I mean, just acknowledging that like you're having a hard time too. Men need to do that because there's a lot of misunderstanding that happens when men don't talk about their experience. And it really, is detrimental sometimes like to the relationship. I think a lot of times too, like what men struggle with is communicating about their emotions and feelings like to their partners. But the problem is like when you don't release some of that, there's a lot of misconceptions and miscommunication that occurs, like not verbally. As men, we don't always get taught or learn how to communicate about our thoughts and feelings. So I think that open communication, and also recognizing this is hard for men too, right? There's a lot out of our control. Men want to control things just as much as women do. So I think, yeah, finding whatever semblance you can, like this will help in the long run. I think the biggest advice that I have for other men is building your support network and being okay with going to different people's support, but also learning how to talk and communicate, finding peer support, finding another person that's gone through it, super beneficial. You need a multitude of people like in this journey. That's really the biggest thing. There's a lot of research that shows the biggest reason why couples drop out of fertility treatments is the psychological stress. So if you can find a way to get support through this, so I'm not going to say you're unscathed, because it will leave a mark and you're going to remember it, and it's impacting, and it can be very traumatic for some people. But if you can find support through that, like that's only going to help you.